We're here at last, the grand finale to FEDA, the Emblem of Justice, creatively titled The Emblem of Justice. Only 2 of the 4 Commodores remain, there's 2 other battles in the meantime, and all that remains after that is Cobalt himself. Can Brian defeat him with the power of the Executor? Can Lois reconcile with her father before it's too late and we have to kill him? Can Richard do the same for his father? Or will he just be another stupid villain who's too proud of his life choices to back the winning horse? We shall see today. But first, we have a short town segment that gives the player the opportunity to stock up on last-minute weapons and supplies. Oh, and Kome's along for the ride too, but he's still not playable. I smell a cut character! Anyways, this is your last chance to shop for anything. Though you can return any time, if you've gone too far in the chapter, you'll have to fight an extra battle to get back because there's a respawning enemy group. This is a simple shop though, with patrol packs and mine repairs and some of the best weapons around, but at this point, you shouldn't need much more. No reason to not spend all your money though. Oh, and be sure to visit the camp to pick up the Executor from storage. Though Brian's likely going to stick to his combat art, the boost isn't totally unwelcome. We kick off our invasion of the capital with a battle against Bart of the 4 Commodores, and since it's Bart, I think now is a good time to talk about this game's connections to the Shining Force games. Those who have played Shining Force probably already caught on to the gameplay similarities, but it goes a lot deeper. Max Entertainment, the company that made FEDA, is comprised of former members of Climax Entertainment, who developed the original Shining Force, and Shining Force's artist became the director of FEDA. This explains why the 2 games share not only gameplay style, but many of the same races and character designs. Brian himself is like an older, badass version of Max from Shining Force. McDougal resembles Xylo with a sword rather than claws. L is like a male Tao. In fact, I think L's gender confusion is a reference of sorts to Tao. And I brought all this up in the Bart battle because Bart and Richard are similar to Elliot and his son Eric, both from the Shining Force games. Even their races are alike. Anyways, Bart is the first sign that they actually decided to make the game several times more challenging for the finale, because it will take several combat arts to drop him, and you've got enemy healers in the mix as well. Dogpiling on Bart seems to be the best course of action. Just be sure to use the magic shield on Brian, because if the other enemies gang up on him, he can actually be killed easily this time. After killing Bart, the fight ends, and predictably Bart shows little remorse for anything he's done, tries to get Brian to join the Empire, you know, generic villain stuff. Man, I wish they had done more with this character. Next up is the repeatable respawning enemy group I mentioned before, so check in at the shop right before you fight this one. It's mostly generic enemies, however be careful with those flying bugs. For some stupid reason they're incredibly powerful, and they fly. I wouldn't blame you for spending combat arts on them either. It might be overkill, but you don't want to risk them dodging and wasting your turn altogether. Mark troopers are present as well, so get that magic shield going. This fight also dropped my rank after it was over, which means I have all of 3 battles to keep and maintain the highest rank for the best ending. I don't get this. My rank has been the highest for a good 6-7 chapters through several rescue missions and routed enemy groups, but this one fight drops it and threatens my earning the best ending. What? Next up is a generic battle with robot guards that won't hurt your score, but is it just me, or does this map look familiar, like it might have been recycled from the previous chapter? Well, it isn't really, but it sure does look like a similar battle from Chapter 7. Whatever, the robots haven't really improved, you just have to be careful because there are more flying enemies than the last time. Also watch the gun turrets because they hit like trucks as well. There's even a boss unit called the Colossus, which is as durable as Bart and has the firepower to match. Whatever you do, don't let its combat art hit several units at once. If it does, be ready with the full map healing spell that you've been relying on this entire time. Well, there are only 2 battles left, and one of them is with Lois's father, the final Commodore. I just don't get this. Cobalt's pretty much a dead man walking. Delaying us for 5 seconds isn't going to be worth however many lives end up being lost in this fight. This is similar to the fight with Bart in that you only have to drag out Luke and kill him to end it. I need to stress again that the magic shield is important here. I didn't use it only because I didn't actually know it could block Luke's combat art. Or maybe I saw it do only scratch damage when it took Brian's arm off several chapters ago, and didn't suspect that it could vaporize somebody all of a sudden. You may also want to have a unit or two sent in the other direction, specifically to make sure the healer can't do anything here. Anyways, we get a scene with Luke here, similar to the one with Bart. Luke won't change his mind and side with us because going against the script is perhaps the greatest sin of all. I guess. I don't know what else to say. I just want to get this one last battle over with, but head outside first and save at the camp for safety. It's time at last, just us and Cobalt and, well, 10 other guys who are still loyal to the guy. Can't forget the cannon fodder. I really hate this fight. They don't show you your rank at the end, so if you kill too many enemies in this fight, you could end up with a worse ending because your rank dropped, and you didn't even realize it. In fact, this happened to me and I had to re-record to get the best ending at last. The best course of action if you're going for the absolute best ending is to cast the magic shield and rush all the way to Cobalt. The combat arts the enemy throws at you don't hurt one bit with the shield. That means you only have to sustain damage from the gun turrets and other foes. Consider killing the healer even if this is a high-ranked run, because you don't want this fight to take too long and Cobalt himself has a massive amount of health. Of course, deaths other than Brian and McDougal don't matter at this point, so you could just use some cannon fodder of your own. Cobalt has maximum HP, MP, and defense, and his combat arts never cost him MP. This is going to take a while. The player's combat arts can also do only a maximum of 15 damage from what I've seen, except for Ryokan. I've heard that if he's in the party, his Death Wave ability can reduce Cobalt to 1 HP and save you a whole mess of trouble. Too bad that's only for Chaos players. I suppose if you get extremely lucky with the Iron Pylum, which Shane can use, that's also an option. I've never gotten that to work though. Cobalt has infinite MP, so you'll have to weather the storm here for as long as you need to, but eventually, after what's sure to be a violent battle with a lot of blood, finally Cobalt will kick the bucket and the ending footage rolls. Cobalt appears to be defeated, but he suddenly gets up and swipes the Executor from Brian, and begins to activate its powers, even though Brian is supposed to be the only one who can use it. Cannoli appears yet again and urges Brian to take the sword back and finish off Cobalt for good. Brian uses his combat art, which does a massive 50 damage this time, ending Cobalt for good. The temple begins collapsing like these places tend to, and Cannoli spirits everyone to safety yet again. And then they start talking about something called the Inheritor of Time? What the hell are they talking about? Did I miss NPC dialogue again? Phantom of Faust, Inheritor of Time. Oh, and get this, did you know Cannoli has a third eye on her forehead? Yeah, I bet you couldn't see it at all in any of her animations, right? What the heck is this? I'm glad McDougal shares my frustration in all of this too, but it's the end now. The following scene changes depending on your rank. I will show only the one you get for having the best ending score, but you can search for the others on YouTube very easily. Well, it looks like Brian, McDougal, and Dora are going to leave the Liberation Army and take the Executor with them so it can never be taken by someone with unworthy hands. Eris and Tom are here too, which makes me wonder if it's possible to get here after they leave the party. Your rank has to drop to the lowest possible for Eris to leave, actually. She's surprisingly tolerant about it despite all her warnings. Lois seems reluctant to go after Brian despite the fact that they were clearly in love, but a little suggestion from Komei and the others and she goes after him. The game ends with Brian going on to command a rebel unit against the Empire on the mainland, and we have an ending quote that's repeated twice because I guess this is an error in the translation. What I seek is not a nation, nor is it rest in peace, but freedom in the name of justice. Sounds like some kind of quote from a philosopher, right? Well, it's not an English quote at any rate, I googled it. And then the credits roll. Well, it was a rather exhausting playthrough, but that's FEDA, the Emblem of Justice. I suppose I can't say much more than has already been said. This is a unique little game with some interesting ideas and definitely a great variety of character designs, but it's unfortunately way too heavily flawed for me to call it the best game since Fire Emblem or whatever. I've already complained long enough about the long, unskippable battle animations that take up most of your time, and how many mission objectives also take too long to accomplish. The alignment system, and how characters join or leave based on how you play the game, is definitely a novel idea, but it has a lot of kinks. I've already said I have no interest in a Chaos playthrough because actually killing things seems as though it'd take even longer on most maps. It also feels self-contradicting. If a character gets KO'd, the punishment for that is potentially losing a rank to get them back, and losing too many ranks means they leave the party, but there are also characters that join only at the lowest ranks, which means that it's better to choose what you want your final rank to be before even starting the game, and then work towards it throughout the entire run. If you bounce between high and low rankings, you're going to lose a lot of party members, and they never come back either. Combat also isn't that deep. In the early stages of the game, enemies get nailed in a single hit most of the time. A little later on, you have more MP for spamming combat arts that do the same in most cases. The difficulty basically didn't pick up all that much until the very end of the game, where it gets a lot harder, especially if you want to keep that FEDA emblem. Map design is, on average, not that great, with lots of oversized, wide-open spaces that take forever to traverse, not to mention several maps where the objective is to kill all enemies anyways, when the emblems encourage you to keep the kill count low. It would also be a huge help to better quantify how many kills you can afford before losing a rank. Now, I compare this game a lot to Fire Emblem in my head to see how it matches up, and that's probably not a good idea to be comparing like every strategy RPG ever to Fire Emblem, but I think Fire Emblem is a good game to kind of stack up other strategy RPGs against, because Fire Emblem was not only the very first strategy RPG ever for the most part, it was also the first strategy RPG to kind of understand the metagame of its own genre, if that makes any sense. It kind of knew what made a strategy RPG good, and a lot of others that came after it don't necessarily always understand this. There are good points to this game. I really like the music, I absolutely love the character designs, and I love how relentless this game is with vulgarity, which is probably the reason this never saw a Western release. You'd have to edit down a lot of McDougal's sexual references and all the swearing, not to mention the jokes centered around touchy subjects. But the humor, as well as the grimdark yet cartoonish setting, helps FEDA stand out a lot. I just wish the lore of the setting were smoothed out more. As you guessed, there are important tidbits you can miss if you're not talking to a lot of NPCs, kind of like in Final Fantasy VIII where the mandatory scenes make less sense if you don't chat with NPCs a lot. Overall, I've always felt that FEDA is an underrated gem of sorts. It's just not much of a shining gem, I guess. It obviously did well enough to see a sequel on the PlayStation, which, to my shock, actually has a 10-minute long live-action intro, which is pretty fun and impressive, even if the actual game doesn't end up amounting to even what the original had. I'll never find out, though, as long as there isn't a translation patch for it, and I haven't really heard all that much good about FEDA 2 anyways. Well, that concludes the playthrough of FEDA, the Emblem of Justice. Now I will go and find some other game to play for my channel, and make more videos that will not be watched. See ya!